was disgusted then when I did it, I'm disgusted now. I went and I sought out professional help. Now they're going to therapy.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts. My name is Spidey, and I use my degree in sociology and psychology, my certifications in criminal interrogation and body language analysis, and over 10 years' experience as an award-winning mentalist to teach people behavioral analysis and practical psychology on stages and television shows all over the world. For several years now, multiple celebrities have alluded to and flat out accused rapper and music producer Diddy for participating in both deviant and illegal activities. Things got a lot more serious towards the end of 2023 when multiple women sued Diddy or P. Diddy or Puff Daddy for numerous accusations, including harassment, trafficking, physical abuse, and sexual assault. One of the women who sued him was his longtime ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, and one day after she presented the lawsuit, they settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. At the time, Diddy commented on all these allegations and said, "I did not do any of the awful things being alleged," and claimed that all these women who were suing him were just looking for a quick payday. But that all changed a couple of days ago when security footage leaked of Diddy and Cassie in a hotel hallway. And I don't want to show that footage or go into the details of what it was. I'll leave a link in the description. You guys can look it up. It's horrible. At the very least, suffice it to say that it's evidence of some of these charges that were alleged against him right there on camera. And it honestly looks like something out of a movie. It's really bad. Shortly after the video was publicly released, Diddy posted a video on his own Instagram where he addressed it and apologized for his behaviors. And in this video, we're going to look at that apology video. We're going to look at his facial expressions and word choice to try to determine, is this a real apology or is he deflecting and hiding something darker? Let's dive right in.
It's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times in your life. But sometimes you gotta do that. I was f***ed up. I hit rock bottom. But I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video.
A lot of interesting stuff happening with his facial expressions, and there's one key moment there where we're getting to a very important piece of information. It's as he says that it's hard to reflect on the darkest moments of your life. And as he's saying darkest, we see his eyes closed for a moment as he's talking. And this is what we call an eye block. Now, the research on eye blocking shows that we do this to focus on something, either keep a thought in or keep a thought out. So it's something negative, we might do this because we don't want to face it. So when we're talking about something dark like this, it's possible to have that eye block because we don't want to face this idea. But very often we also use eye blocking to emphasize something. We're talking to show how serious this thing is. But there's something interesting in the way it happens here. There is a ton of research on the gestures that we use when we speak. In most cases, these are called illustrators, whether it's with the hands or with the eyes. These are gestures that happen as we're speaking that help us communicate the thought more effectively. Now, in almost every single study about these gestures, they found that when you're speaking, the gesture comes exactly with the thought that it illustrates or just a little bit before. And that was such a great example of it. As I said just a little bit before, the hand came up to illustrate just a little bit at the same time, naturally. Sometimes it also comes just a little bit before, so it might go just a little bit. So the hand comes up to illustrate what we're about to say. The reason for this is simple. It's one thought being communicated with both word and gesture. So the gestures are synchronized with the words. Sometimes the gesture comes out a little earlier because we just need an extra second to find the right word. So the thought is coming out, it's just the words are a little bit delayed. Think about how off it feels for me to say that sometimes the gesture comes out just a little bit after the word, right? That feels unnatural. It feels like there was an afterthought that said, okay, do this gesture to drive that point home because the words weren't enough. And it's exactly for that reason that in behavioral analysis, we look for that synchronicity. We're looking for the gestures to match the words because the moment they fall out of sync, when the gesture comes after the word, it's pretty clear that this is the person really trying hard to add this gesture to drive the point home. In other words, they're trying to sell you something as opposed to just trying to tell you something. So with that in mind, the way I would expect with natural rhythm for that eye block to happen in that sentence would be as the person is saying darkest, to go the darkest moments of our lives. That's one thought coming out and expressing how dark this moment was. But if we watch P. Diddy, that's not what we're getting. Take a look.
It's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times in your life. The darkest times in your life.
His words and volume are emphasizing darkest. That's what's being emphasized. But the eye block is coming after that on the way down from that emphasis as he's saying times. In other words, the emphasis with his voice and with his eyes are happening at two different places. Now this stood out to me especially for a very successful music producer and rapper, because rappers are the heavyweight champions of illustrators. As they're rapping, they're illustrating and emphasizing with gestures and words very well on the beat. So that moment really felt to me like the word darkest came out, and then as an afterthought, we get this extra emphasis for him to drive that point home. The other thing that's really interesting in that moment is that as his eyes are closing to emphasize that moment, even if it's late, we're seeing his eyebrows come down and close together. And that was really, really interesting, because as you watch that entire first clip and the entirety of the rest of this video that we're going to look at soon, his eyebrows barely move. Now, my regular viewers know that I pay a lot of attention to the eyebrows because they communicate a lot. Emotion, intention, emphasis. And when I see no movement in the eyebrows, I want to know, is it that they don't move or that they can't move? Because if they can't move, we could speculate as to why it is. You know, it could be cosmetic surgery or certain procedures or some kind of nerve damage that makes it so they physically can't move their eyebrows, and we just consider that part of their baseline. But when I do see movement in the eyebrows, it allows me to know, okay, they can move. So in moments where we're not seeing that movement, it allows me to think, well, maybe it's because the emotion or the emphasis just isn't there. Now, that being said, when it comes to Diddy, his eyebrows very rarely move, and it's been this way for decades. We can attribute this to cosmetic procedures. Maybe he's had some, or some kind of condition, I don't know. But if you go look at talk shows that he's done, interviews that he's done, they very, very rarely move. They'll go a long time without ever emphasizing, without ever being confused or anything. They just stay still. So what that means for me is that I know his eyebrows can move, but I also know that they don't move. So as we go on with this, I can't expect the same kind of emphasis or emotion in the eyebrows that we would expect to see on somebody else. His baseline is just simply different from that. Let's talk about word choice right there in the beginning, because he's saying sometimes it's really difficult to reflect on the darkest times of your life, but sometimes you have to do that. Now, that pronoun choice is really, really important. He's not saying that lately I've had to reflect on the darkest moments of my life and I just had to go through that. It's not I. For someone who's going to be using I a lot, here he's talking about you, how you have to reflect on the darkest moments of your life. We often see this type of language in people who are apologizing for something because they want you to be able to relate to their situation, right? They're trying to say, you know, we all have our bad moments. So you go, yeah, you know what? I guess it's true. I've had bad moments as well. So I can kind of relate, and maybe I can cut him some slack. But here's the difference. This is a very, very dark moment. I would like to think that most of us don't have dark moments anywhere close to this kind of behavior. So for him to come out and say, you know, sometimes you have to reflect on your darkest moments and get us to go, yeah, you know, I have to do that as well, is a little misleading, because the dark moments that we have to reflect on don't come anywhere close to this behavior for most of us. He goes on to say, my behaviors in that video were inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. And notice how it's my behaviors, my actions, that video, but there's no real details. What video, what behaviors, what actions, right? If someone's watching this and they don't know what happened or what this video is, there's zero context being given here. He's not saying what he's actually taking responsibility for. Now, in behavioral analysis, there's something we call psychological distancing. This is when people use words that are a little less severe than the action they're being accused of as a way to distance themselves from how horrible the action is. So they might say something like took instead of stole, or they might say something like hurt instead of kill or murder, just because that's more in line with their image of themselves. It's less bad. But this goes so far beyond psychological distancing. This is like psychological muting. It's not that he's using softer terms to describe his actions, he's just not describing his actions at all. It's almost like you could take this apology and just apply it to any scenario and it would still work. Now, there are a few reasons I believe he's doing this. One, it is extreme distancing. By not talking about it, by not describing it,